What you're about to hear will make you question everything you know about family, sacrifice, and destiny. An 8-year-old girl, so poor she ate mud cakes to survive, stumbled upon a 3-year-old boy, his tiny body drenched in ritual blood. What she chose to do next defied every law of her culture. And 25 years later, that same boy would repay her in a way no one could have imagined. This isn't fiction. This happened in a small village outside Kumasi. The girl's name was Akojua Mensah. The boy, his real name will shock you. And what he became will restore your faith in human destiny. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the universe saving your life. So stay with me, because you won't want to miss a single moment. Obwesai, Ghana, 1998. Dawn rises over a village forgotten by time, where hunger is not just a feeling, but a way of life. This is where 8-year-old Akojua Mensah wakes each morning. Her father, crushed in a collapsed gold mine. Her mother, gone to the capital, never to return. All that remains is a paralyzed grandmother and a child who carries burdens far beyond her years. At 4:30 each morning, Akojua ties a rusted tin can to her waist and begins a 3-kilometer walk to fetch water. Not from a clean borehole, but from a contaminated well, where frogs swim and the taste of iron burns the tongue. By 6 o'clock, she is back in the bush, her hands digging in the earth for wild yams, her small body weaving through palm trees in search of fallen nuts. These are not chores. They are survival. By 9, she goes house to house, offering her labor for scraps of food. Washing calabashes, carrying firewood, anything that might keep her grandmother alive one more day. By noon, she sits beside her grandmother, helping her crush leaves and roots into bitter medicine, herbal remedies that are traded for coins so small they could never buy even a single schoolbook. And when evening falls, while other children return from school with chatter and laughter, Akojua teaches herself to read. Not from fresh books, but from old torn newspapers pulled from rubbish heaps. One day, digging through trash, she found a torn mathematics textbook. Its cover ripped, its pages stained. But in her hands, it became a treasure beyond gold. She hugged it to her chest like the world's rarest jewel, a promise to herself that knowledge one day would be her escape. While Akojua scraped the earth for yams, just across the village walls stood a different world, the Osei compound. A place where hunger was never spoken of, and where wealth flowed like the Obwesai River, golden, powerful, and untouchable. Inside lived Mr. Kwadwo Osei, the gold mining magnate whose empire stretched across Ghana. To villagers, he was a god among men. To politicians, a threat, feared and envied in equal measure. Beside him was Abina Osei, once a beauty queen, admired across the nation. But beauty fades, and beneath her flawless smile hid a woman drowning in secrets. Their empire was crumbling, mines failing, debts mounting, political enemies circling like vultures. And at the center of it all, the mistakes of Abina Osei. She ignored the warnings. She poured fortune after fortune into gambling and reckless deals. And with every loss, she buried her husband's political career deeper into the soil. The once untouchable Osei family was rotting from within. In desperation, they turned not to banks or politicians, but to the shrine, to a priest whose whispers promised wealth restored, power regained. but at a price too heavy for any soul to bear. The price was blood, not of an enemy, not of a stranger, but of their own bloodline, their 3-year-old son, Kwaku Osei, playing innocently in the courtyard, unaware that his laughter echoed as his death sentence. Cultural traditions meant to protect had been twisted by greed. A sacred practice, once rooted in honor, was now poisoned by fear of poverty and hunger. The Osei family believed that by feeding the gods their son, they could save themselves. On the night of the full moon, when the forest held its breath and shadows grew long, the Osei family carried their darkest secret into the heart of Kokum. Wrapped in fine cloth, 3-year-old Kwaku slept in his mother's arms. His head rested on her shoulder, innocent, unaware that every step his mother took was leading him closer to death. At the shrine, the priest awaited, his chest painted with white clay, his hands trembling over a ritual blade. He spoke of power, of restoration, of gods demanding a life to heal a family's broken fortune. The boy awoke. His tiny eyes blinked at the fire. Confusion turned to terror as strange hands painted his skin with clay and blood. His cries pierced the silence of the forest like arrows through the night. Abina Osei's heart split in two. Every instinct screamed to protect her son, yet fear of disgrace chained her body. She had been told this was the only way to save her family. But as the blade rose, a mother's love began to fight back. In a single moment of defiance, she faltered. The boy twisted from her grasp, tiny legs kicking, feet pounding the dirt. He broke free. Into the forest he ran, his small body glowing under the blood moon, leaving behind a trail of red where ritual cuts had marked his skin. The forest erupted. Torches swinging, men shouting, footsteps thundering after him. But Kwaku ran with a desperation born of innocence, fleeing not just his family, but his fate. What happened next would change 2 families forever, and carve a story so powerful, it would ripple through generations. Dawn crept softly over Obwesai's forest edge. While others still slept, Akojua searched the earth for snails and mushrooms. Barefoot, hungry, her small hands brushed through dew-soaked leaves, each discovery a chance to survive one more day. Then, she froze. The silence of the forest was broken by a sound no hunter seeks. A cry. Not of an animal, but of a child. She followed the sound, each step slow, her heart beating louder with every echo. And there, lying against the roots of an old tree, was a boy, no older than 3, his tiny body covered in blood. His clothes spoke of wealth, fine fabric stitched with gold thread. Tiny bracelets glistened on his wrists, and carved into his skin, ritual markings no child should ever bear. In that moment, Akojua understood more than most adults. This was no ordinary child. He belonged to the wealthy Osei family. Returning him could mean reward money, enough to change her life. But the blood, the cuts, told another story. Someone wanted him dead. 30 seconds. That was all she had. 30 seconds that would define destiny. Should she save herself by returning him? Or save him and risk everything? She chose to save him. She carried him to the stream, washing his wounds with trembling hands. With nothing but water and hope, she cleaned blood from his tiny body. She gave him her only meal, palm nut soup meant for her grandmother. Spoon by spoon, she fed him life from the little she had. To hide him, she built a shelter in the hollow of an abandoned termite mound. There, among dirt and shadows, she turned danger into sanctuary. And then, the boy spoke. His first word to the girl who saved him. He whispered, through tears and broken breath, "Mama." In that single word, the universe sealed their bond. A poor girl who had nothing, and a rich boy who had lost everything. Together, they would carry a story that neither blood nor gods, nor time itself could erase. Back at the Osei compound, the story was rewritten. To the village, they told of a family outing gone wrong. Their child, Kwaku, had been kidnapped by strangers in the forest. And so began the performance of power and grief. A massive search was launched. Men combed the forest with torches. Women sang dirges at night. Police arrived, their notebooks filling with false reports. The whole village pulsed with panic. The Osei family offered a reward, 10 million sadies. More money than most villagers would see in a lifetime. For some, it was hope. For others, it was temptation. But inside a one-room mud house, Akojua and her grandmother carried a secret that burned heavier than gold. The boy was not lost. He was hidden, alive, and only 2 people in the world knew. Her grandmother trembled with terror. "If anyone discovers this child, we will be killed," she whispered. The girl was only 8, but she felt the weight of death pressing on her shoulders. The village pressed harder. "Why aren't you helping us search?" they asked. But how could she search for a child who lay hidden by her own hands? Each question was a knife. Each lie, a wound. She could end it all. Take the boy back, claim the reward, feed her grandmother, return to school. But she also knew the blood on his body meant death waited for him at home. Her choice was between survival and humanity. And so, a poor girl who had nothing lied to an entire community. Every word she spoke was a stone added to the mountain she carried. But she would not break. Not yet. But Akojua had no idea what this choice would cost her, nor how far the Osei family would go to cover the truth. To survive, the boy had to become someone else. Kwaku Osei, the blood-stained heir of wealth, vanished. And in his place, a child named Kofi was born. Grandmother's so-called nephew, visiting from Tamale. They stripped away his old world. The silk shirts and gold buttons disappeared into a clay pot under the bed. In their place, faded cotton hand-me-downs and the quiet dignity of a new story. Survival was never easy. 3 mouths now fed on food meant for 2. Every meal was stretched thin. Medical care for the boy's injuries was impossible. And each night, the forest screamed inside his dreams. Yet amid the hardship, love sprouted. One morning, the boy looked up and whispered a single word, "Sister." Akojua froze, then smiled. From that day, he was no longer a burden. He was family. Grandmother filled his nights with Anant's stories, teaching him the rhythm of proverbs. He learned to eat kenki with his hands, to laugh at simple games with stones and sticks. The child who came covered in blood was now learning to live in joy. But while one family found healing in poverty, another spiraled deeper into ruin. 2 lives, forever bound, now drifted in opposite directions. Mrs. Osei collapsed into despair. Her nights became endless vigils, her mind unraveling. She hired investigators from Accra, spent fortunes chasing shadows, and still, no child returned. Even wealth could not hold a broken marriage together. Guilt corroded the walls of the Osei home. Accusations flew. Blame replaced love. And the mansion grew colder each day. Meanwhile, in the small hut, life demanded sacrifice. Akosua left school forever, her books traded for firewood and labor. But in her absence, the boy she protected began to shine. His intelligence, his questions, his spirit, too bright to ignore. And so the cruel irony took root. While the rich family mourned in silk and gold, the poor family created joy out of nothing. One side drowning in grief, the other learning to love. The first year was the hardest. Kofi, once Kwaku, never stopped asking questions. Where is my real mama? Why don't I live in the big house on the hill? Every word was a knife twisting in Akosua's chest. The village wasn't blind. Whispers followed Akosua and her grandmother. How had a paralyzed woman suddenly gained a strong nephew from Tamale? Why did he speak differently, dress differently, carry himself with such grace? Their story began to fray under curious eyes. Meanwhile, survival was breaking them. A small farm could not feed 3 hungry mouths. Debt piled up. Nights were spent in hunger, days in endless work. The love that bound them now carried the weight of constant sacrifice. And danger came too close. Osei family search parties marched through the village, posters with the boy's face nailed to walls. Once, a police officer even bent down, staring hard at Kofi's features. Akosua's heart nearly stopped. Yet slowly, the village adjusted. The strange nephew became part of the fabric. Children played with him, elders gave him blessings, and grandmother's protective arms became the only home he knew. But just when it seemed they might survive the lie, the second year brought something they could not hide. Something that nearly exposed everything. By 2003, time had done its work. Akosua was 13 now, her childhood traded for duty. Kofi, 8 years old, was no longer the blood-soaked toddler she rescued. He was bright, curious, and dangerously noticeable. His intelligence could not be hidden. At the village school, he solved problems meant for older children, recited proverbs with perfect rhythm, and asked questions teachers themselves struggled to answer. Whispers began again. Who was this gifted boy really? But with every year, his resemblance grew stronger. The sharp jawline, the eyes, the small birthmark on his left shoulder, features carried straight from his father's blood. Features the Osei family still searched for. Worse still, a new police chief had arrived. He was thorough, unrelenting, and unlike the others, he refused to believe a wealthy heir could simply vanish forever. Kofi's questions deepened too. Why don't I have a father? Why don't I look like anyone here? Each word pierced Akosua's soul. She loved him like a brother, but love alone could not erase truth. Grandmother carried the secret like a stone on her back. The stress ate at her body, the weight of lies breaking her health. And as Akosua shouldered more and more responsibility, her own childhood slipped away. But even in the storm of secrecy, life pressed forward. A village boy began watching Akosua with shy glances. The first spark of young love, complicated, dangerous, and impossible in a life built on lies. The lie was growing too big to contain. And as Kofi's light shone brighter, so did the shadows around him. The question was no longer if the truth would surface, but when. It took just one pair of sharp eyes to nearly destroy the secret Akojua had protected for 7 long years. A new nurse in the village clinic, trained in Kumasi, saw something no one else had noticed. A small, distinctive birthmark on the boy's shoulder. She remembered the posters, the radio reports, the whispers of a missing child years ago. And suddenly, she was staring not at an ordinary village boy, but at the lost heir of the Osei family. She approached the grandmother quietly, her voice trembling. Where did this boy come from? Fear gripped the old woman's heart. For the first time, their secret stood on the edge of exposure. In a late-night conference, grandmother, Akojua, and the nurse sat in the candlelight. Tears, whispers, and finally, truth. For the first time, the story was told to an outsider. The ritual, the rescue, the deception that had saved a life. And instead of betrayal, the nurse offered loyalty. She promised silence. She promised care. And in that moment, the circle of protectors grew by one. With her help, the boy's health improved, the family found strength, and Kofi's brilliance began to shine even brighter. He excelled in school, Akojua balanced work and studies, and the community embraced them as their own. Even as the Osei family's search efforts waned, love in the village deepened. By 2008, the years had transformed them all. Akojua was 18, no longer the little girl who found a bloodied child in the forest. She had become a beautiful young woman, her quiet strength drawing marriage proposals from the village. Kofi was 13 now, tall and strong, his features sharper, echoing the father he did not remember. Every day, the resemblance grew harder to ignore. In the quiet evenings, grandmother told them the story again and again, the choice that changed everything. She reminded them that love, not blood, was what made a family. But as Kofi entered his teenage years, curiosity sharpened into suspicion. And at 13, he stumbled on something that shattered the fragile peace they had built. A discovery so powerful, it would unravel their perfect secret. Today, the village where this story began has 0 school dropouts due to poverty. The Akojua Mensa Foundation has educated over 25,000 children. But the real miracle isn't the money or the buildings. It is in the lives transformed, the futures rewritten, and the love that continues to ripple across generations. Akojua, love multiplies when you give it away. Kwaku, my birth mother gave me life, but Akojua gave me a life worth living. Current Mrs. Osei, sometimes your biggest mistake leads to your greatest redemption. One choice, 2 lives, infinite possibilities. In a world that often rewards selfishness, remember, sometimes the poorest person is the richest in ways that truly matter. And sometimes, saving someone else is how you save yourself.